The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience. Today, 2020 Fantasy Football Rankings Update. NFL news, injuries, training camp, reports. I'd say preseason, but there is no preseason. And listen, we're finally getting down to the time where people are taking fantasy football and football seriously again. It's happening, and it's coming very soon. 2 weeks away. My rankings you can find in the description of this video or podcast and up on dkplaybook.com if you want to go the long route to get there. Why would I want to click on one link that brings me there when I can click on 80 different links and then go find it? You don't want to do that. Just click on the link. And they are updated to this moment. Well, not to this moment. I'm going to speak with Jake Ciely from theathletic.com. We're going to update the old rankings because it's time to get it going. There's a lot of impactful injury news that we haven't gone over yet from the very top of the board, which, I mean, if you were drafting this week, I'm actually doing my main draft the Wednesday, the day before the season actually starts, just so there's no wiggle room. And we added 2 extra bench spots this season as well to try to preemptively get ahead of what could happen. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe everything goes great. I hope that's the case. But if not, I want to have a contingency plan in place. You are now watching this, if you're watching the video version, on Mayo Media Network. This is where the Pat Mayo Experience will live from now on. So please subscribe to the Mayo Media Network. I mean, even if you're listening to the audio podcast on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever, please go subscribe. If you have a Gmail account, it takes like 3 seconds. So please go do that. We're doing some giveaways. So smash the like button to the episode. And in the comment section, tell me where you are drafting overall Kenyon Drake right now, if the draft was today, because I'm very curious to know what the perception is on Kenyon Drake at the moment, because we don't have all of the information. So you'd have to make a calculated guess now, wouldn't you? More so than you would normally drafting fantasy football players. But if we can get to 6,000 subs for Mayo Media Network by Thursday morning, we got a lot of giveaways. We got video games to give away. We have Fantasy National Golf memberships to give away. If we can get to 10,000 by next Monday, I got cash giveaways for people. So like the episodes, comment on the episodes, rate the podcast, share it around on social media. We get up to 10K. Some of you out there might be getting a nice Venmo or PayPal from Mayo Media Network because I'm bribing people to subscribe to the channel. Jake Ciely from theathletic.com is on the line. What's up?
What's going on? Yeah, hey, look, I've already taken care of my sub and following on Twitter and everything like that. Although I will tell you one thing, Pat. I broed somebody for, I think, might be the first time ever. I already got who do I start in week 1 in the rankings questions.
That's amazing. I don't even know who to draft right now, let alone who to start week 1.
2 days ago, and we updated the cheat sheets in the rankings, and because I've been updating mostly Sundays and Fridays, and now I have to update today for some injury news and stuff. But anyway, yeah, that was one of the most recent questions. I just put bro. I just I can't even.
I like how you're dropping bros on people now. I enjoy this very much. Again, at AllInKid on Twitter for Jake Ciely, at the PME for myself. Also, Jake, get this. I saw Brad Evans from Fade the Noise tweet this out. He said it would take the lowest depths of hell for him to ever go onto Cameo for private messages. And I saw that. I was like, I'd do that. I'm on Cameo now. So if you go to cameo.com/thepme, you can get me to make a shit talking video for you. You got a question you can ask me up there, whatever.
How much?
It's $25. So, people got $25 to throw around. Not everyone, but some people who watch this show, I'm surely they have money to lose on golf bets every week. They can pay for a $25 cameo. And I don't want to do 1,000 of them, but you want me to read your draft order off? I'm in on that. You got a question? You want me to, like I said, shit talk one of your league mates? Up there. Cameo.com/thepme. I hope to have some fun with it.
I hope you do too. I envy you. I'm gonna look for. Can you share them if you do them for somebody else? Like, can I see what you did for somebody else?
I actually have no idea. I just signed up, so I don't know really what.
I was just saying because I want to see. Like, I would do it, but I can't. I don't want to risk my job. So that's my only concern.
Yeah, see, when you work for yourself with Mayo Media Network, I can't fire me. I can be canceled, but I can't fire myself.
Oh gosh, I want to see these. I hopefully somebody tell us. There you go in the comments. Tell us if we can see other people's cameos that you do for them.
All right, let's jump in to Ligue Nationale Football. It's coming back, like I said, in 14 days. We'll have first kickoff with the Texans and the Chiefs. We got fantasy drafts to do, and we got a bunch of injury news to run through and how this affects everything. I haven't talked to you yet about Miles Sanders. What's your level of concern on Sanders right now?
It's very, very mild, like 1 or 2 out of 10 for right now. This one legitimately does sound like they're just playing it safe. And it's just, look, we know what Miles Sanders can be. You and I talk about this most every offseason we've done so far and say, when it comes down to a running back, that's the quote unquote bell cow, the heavy lead, whatever. I'd actually just prefer they don't play the preseason unless it's like a rookie or something like that, or somebody switching teams, because just get to week 1 and be healthy. That's all we care about. We don't want these top 12-ish running backs getting hurt in the preseason. So this one, he's not in a boot like we're probably about to talk about the other guy. Like everything sounds fine. It's just being safe. And here's the good news, Pat. They haven't signed anybody. That would have concerned me if they signed somebody, but they haven't even signed anybody. I don't even think they've been reported as bringing anybody in.
I moved Miles Sanders to number 9 in my overall rankings. That's 1 spot behind Dalvin Cook, 1 spot ahead of Julio Jones. So that's where he will be populated on the top 200 list in my rankings. Kenyon Drake is the other guy you mentioned. He is in a walking boot. They're just calling it nicks and dings right now. Walking boot doesn't sound great, though, for a guy I want to draft at the back end of the first round or in the second round. Out of 10, what's the concern?
So I would say now it's probably like a 5 or 6 for me. We've talked about it, Kenyon Drake before. Is Kenyon Drake for me was always somebody I didn't love having as an RB1. So I fortunately have 0 shares of him, and not being like, oh, look at me, victory lap, and all. Like, I just was concerned. So fortunately for me, Kenyon Drake was already, and that's why I'm talking about, is because he was already a concern from his variance game to game. He was essentially Deshaun Jackson, Amari Cooper, not last year's Amari Cooper, but years ago. Actually, here's the best one, the one that you and I both love to hate on all the time. He's Jared Cook. It was 3 games, 60% of his fantasy season. Of course, I think he can flatten that out and be better over the course of 16 games with the Arizona Cardinals. But I still thought there's a potential for that variance where most of the other running backs going inside the top 10 have a few bad games. It's not that much of a roller coaster. So this just amps that factor, is, if he's going to be dealing with this for the first couple of weeks, does Edmonds look good, show well? He's already been talked up by Kingsbury that all of a sudden Kenyon Drake goes from being 70% of the touches to the entire season only being 60 to keep him healthy. But also get Edmonds involved because he looks so good.
Yeah, Chase Edmonds appears to be a fantastic pick in like the 12th round if you can get him down there. Just not someone you'd ever like start even as a flex, but could really get into this role. And maybe we'll see how he's used in this offense. I've moved Drake down in the rankings to number 14. So
That running back?
No, overall. Come on now. I'm still taking him ahead of like Nick Chubb and Josh Jacobs. Those losers.
No, I'm not, because I have him at running back 14. That's funny. That's funny that you said that. I thought you were saying running back 14 because I would take Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs, Eckler, Chubb, Mixon, Sand. Like, I will take all those guys ahead of the risk of he's in a boot. When was the last time a boot was truly precautionary and everything was 100% fine?
We still got 2 weeks to go. If he's out of the boot by next week, then we're fine. I'm going to pretend like that's the case. Cliff Kingsbury did say just some normal nicks and bruises, normal camp stuff.
Because coaches are always 100% truthful.
It's kind of precautionary with him, knowing what he'll be able to do. But
yeah, sure.
I'm curious to see how this goes. If I'm drafting, I'm still taking the chance on him, but I did move him significantly down from where I had him. Like, I moved Kelsey ahead of him just because I talking myself back into Kelsey as the swing pick at the end of the first round again.
Talking yourself back. You've been pro Kelsey for like your entire life.
I agree, but like I had him. I think when I initially did the rankings, I had him at 18. He's up to 13 now. I'm just okay. I have him in every league that I've drafted so far. So,
How is Kelsey not 101 for you?
I would not take him at 101. 102, maybe you can talk me into it, but like. I have Mixon ahead of him. I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire ahead of him, but I still have Drake ahead of Fournette, Chubb, Eckler, Gurley.
Yeah,
I don't even have the rest of the running backs.
Well, I have him ahead of Gurley, but I named all the guys that I would now take. And that's the thing is, I didn't love him as a top 10 running back to begin with, and now this uncertainty. If I'm drafting this week, and of course, as you said, if he's out of the boot next week, or if he's out of the boot by the time you draft, you can move him back up, and I will move him back up, kind of begrudgingly. But if I'm drafting right now, I'm going to avoid that risk, and I would feel better about Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones. And I have concerns about Aaron Jones, as you know. Can I ask you a question? I don't want to pull a Jeff on you and you yell at me because I'm trying to ask you. Were you going to bring up Dalvin Cook at all?
I was that was actually the next news item up, that if his contract is not in place by week 1, what do we actually expect is going to happen with Dalvin Cook? These were the concerns that we had 3 months ago, and then the concerns went away, and now they're back.
Well, they went away because if he completely holds out, he's just a restricted free agent. And so he's still stuck. Like, he's not going anywhere. So it seemed like he got the sense of, hey, look, I'm going to have to play anyway. So what's the point of capping off half my season, even if I'm not back with it? And I'm kind of giving narrative to like what the thought process would be is, you know, a full season of my work is going to look better for my potential contract, not with the Vikings, than if I hold out, and people have the assumption that they did with Le'Veon Bell, because Le'Veon Bell's contract was still solid, but it was not what he was aiming for. So that's the narrative you create for Dalvin Cook, saying, hey, you know, I'm just going to be out there for week 1. When Adam Schefter comes out and says that if he's playing in his fantasy league, which he does, that he would be hesitant about taking him, it makes you kind of double take. You mentioned that you have him further down. Right now, I have Dalvin Cook. If I knew he was ready for week 1, he was going to play the season, I actually have him in half point and full point PPR just in front of Zeke, because I do think Zeke's late season usage in the passing game and decline overall kind of knocks him right behind him. But as of today, I think that you kind of have to put Dalvin Cook late first round, maybe early second. And I'm not going to argue against you is what I'm saying. It's like, I understand the risk, because if we do get to week 1 and he pulls at least a Le'Veon Bell or Melvin Gordon and he's out for 8 games just to get that contract where he's not a restricted free agent, I mean, that's a killer to take in the first round and have that happen to you in the first week.
Yeah. And there's other guys. The problem is that once you get past like the first 5 picks or so, like Cook would be in that class with the high end running backs that everyone's taking at the beginning of drafts, if all things being equal. All things are not equal, so he starts slipping down. That at the same time, if you have pick 11 and Cook is there, you probably take him, but you do still run that risk.
And here's the other problem, which I'm saying you don't even need to take him there, is because now you know you're going to put in the back of your mind, I need to go get Madison. Okay. And now you're reaching on Madison potentially a round or 2 earlier, where he's already going to go now higher than he was going 2 weeks ago because of this news. And somebody else is going to do what you and I do a lot, and you love to do more than anybody, is go take other people's handcuffs. Somebody's going to be thinking that, and then you're going to say, oh, I got to get Madison in the 6th, basically like around Kareem Hunt now. And that's the downside of taking Cook, is now you have to back that up or build ridiculous running back depth, which still kind of hamstrings your ability later on in the draft.
Turns out Mike Williams cannot stay healthy. So does this make, I was trying to parse this out in my mind of how to attack the Chargers from a fantasy perspective this year. And I'm starting to think that Keenan Allen might be the most undervalued player in all of fantasy football.
I am nodding my head in agreement. I have a lot of Keenan Allen. I'm frustrated that this kind of ruins the value that we're going to get on Keenan Allen. But I did have a fair share of Mike Williams too, because Mike Williams last year was going to have a crazy positive touchdown regression for the fact of only scoring 2 touchdowns if he only repeated what he did. The good thing about this is if you look at Tyrod Taylor back with the Bills back in the day, Sammy Watkins was good with him. Charles Clay was a thing for 2 years, and Hunter Henry's significantly better than Charles Clay as a talent. I think that people were too low on Hunter Henry as a whole. I think they're too low on this entire offense as a whole because they're so concerned about Tyrod Taylor and potentially Justin Herbert, where Phillip Rivers is just coming off one of his worst years to date. Just his efficiency in the end zone, red zone targets were extremely poor. So I don't think that there was going to be anything where it's going to be a massive drop off. With this Mike Williams injury, is now you take the concerns of, well, he's splitting it up to Austin Eckler and 3 potential weapons. Now it's Austin Eckler and 2, and you funnel Tyrod Taylor, even Tyrod Taylor only throwing for 3,500 yards, maybe 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns, similar to Josh Allen. It's all funneled to 2 and 3 people as opposed to 3 and 4. Yes, Keenan Allen was already undervalued, and now it's even more so. And I still think Hunter Henry is undervalued at tight end.
Tyrell, the Gazelle Williams, has a torn labrum. He's going to try to play through it. Good news for your boy Ruggs, and I guess Brian Edwards. Like we kind of keep coming back to this. Like I was kind of like dismissive of it when it first began, but it's not like he's going in the 7th round or something. You still get this guy like the 15th.
Yes, and that's the good thing about it. And actually, Ruggs essentially is going cheaper than what his cost should be for a number 1 wide receiver. And they're both rookies. And of course, that's concerning to have two rookies being your top two options. But I actually just did an article at The Athletic where the beat writer for the Raiders went through my projections, gave his input, and we went back and forth a little bit. And, I talked about this receiving core. And before the news even came out, he initially was like, oh, you're a little bit too high on Bryan Edwards. And this news came out. And he's like, well, maybe not anymore. And his was more injury based, but he thought Bryan Edwards was going to take over. It was just going to take a few weeks because we saw Tyrell Williams still had ability left in his body last year before he got hurt. He was actually on a really nice pace at the beginning of the season. And that was his point. It was going to take a little bit of time. But now, I mean, would anybody be shocked that Tyrell Williams just doesn't even play this season? To play through a torn labrum, that I don't think he's going to be much of a factor. It kind of gives a little bit of a glimmer of hope back to Hunter Renfrow a little because they won't be able to play Hunter, I get all these names, Henry Ruggs as much in the slot as they initially planned if Tyrell was going to be a definitive starter. So I think it doesn't really move Ruggs. It really kind of moves Edwards a lot and moves Renfrow back up a little bit.
Dionte Johnson, everyone's favorite fantasy sleeper from like 9 weeks ago, then started getting overdrafted. He hasn't practiced the past 6 days. So, and Claypool's making headlines at practice. You still have your guy, James Washington. Eric Ebron is developing a connection with Ben Roethlisberger. This is just great news for Juju, right?
I really think it is. The Dionte Johnson news kind of put some hope back into James Washington that he still has something to offer this team, a great deep threat. The Chase Claypool news, he's a rookie. People thought he was miscast and should be moved to a tight end. The Steelers said that's not going to happen, which I agree with. He really shouldn't be, but at the same time, still a rookie, still a big body, good with 50-50 balls. I think if anything, the Dionte Johnson kind of turns this more into the Seahawks of old before they got DK Metcalf, where it's just a mess. 1 week it's going to be Dionte Johnson, 1 week it's going to be Washington, 1 week it's going to play cool. Switzer, is he still even on the team? It's just going to be like, go get Juju Smith-Schuster, enjoy Ben Roethlisberger being back at quarterback, maybe even a couple shares of Eric Ebron, but the wide receivers are just going to be frustrating.
One player that I haven't really heard anything about throughout the course of draft season, these are kind of my favorite guys to go target because their ADP was once pretty high and they just start slipping due no fault of their own. They're either unsexy players, they're in a bad situation, and this kind of goes hand in hand with this. But I'm kind of talking myself into Devin Singletary as a good pick because he was going like the 3rd round to start. Then it was in the 4th. Then it was in the 5th. He's dropped like the 7th or 8th round in a lot of things. Everyone wants Zach Moss. Everyone wants all these other players. But like Singletary's still the guy in Buffalo. If he can work on his receiving game, I think he might just be a great like mid-round pick. I rarely say that because I think all mid-round picks are kind of shitty to begin with. But he's just someone who keeps slipping, and I don't understand. I get the case of why he's slipping. It's going to be overall touchdowns. But I think the touches themselves are going to be there for him.
See, that's the concern that people have, and that's what's starting. So the beat writer for The Athletic is saying that the touches actually could even skew to Moss if, to what you're talking about, doesn't happen. Like, people make assumptions when they see certain types of players, and one of the assumptions with Singletary, given his size and his elusiveness, because he is elusive, is that he's great in the passing game. He actually really isn't. He's kind of mid-level. He's an average receiving running back, and he does need to improve to hold off Moss and keep that share where he's the lead. And I think that's the concern. Like, I'm not even the biggest Moss guy, but Moss does bring better power, does bring better touchdown upside, and does bring better first, second, short yardage, that type of work. If Singletary doesn't improve in the passing game, if Singletary falters for a few weeks, I think that's the biggest concern, is that we could get to week 5 and all of a sudden this is 60-40 Moss. I'm with you that Singletary has now fallen so far that the risk is cooked into his price and he's all upside at that point. But I understand why people have pushed him down. I think he's gone too far, as you said, though. Like, if he's in the 7th round, I'm going to have a lot of Singletary. I just wasn't taking him in like the 5th, early 6th.
No, I completely understand that case, but like the case was that, maybe this is where he should have been going the entire time. I'm just looking at the NFC drafts from the past week, and he's going at ADP 72. That's like the same as Tariq Cohen. That's running back number 32.
See, but I think the question now is, what people have is, would you rather take him or Kareem Hunt, when you know what Kareem Hunt's role is? If Devin Singletary gets kicked into the Kareem Hunt role, he has less upside.
But Kareem Hunt's going like 20 picks before him now. Like, Kareem Hunt, the balloon is just going.
I know, but I'm giving you the reason why he's fallen that far. Like, do you take Singletary or do you take Ronald Jones with the helium going with the Buccaneers?
It hasn't quite gotten there yet, but I mean, we're pretty firm in the, like, is the move now just take Keyshawn Vaughn because no one wants him anymore and that we don't know what the thing is, or is Ronald Jones legitimate?
Ronald Jones is legitimate, and if he's not, there's still Darian Gumbawale, the goon, your guy. There's still LaShawn McCoy. All the reports from all the beat writers, including like The Athletic, like everybody is saying the same thing about Vaughn is don't expect to see a lot of him, and if you do, it's probably going to be special teams.
Would you go Ronald Jones or Kareem Hunt?
I would go Ronald Jones.
Would you go Ronald Jones or Raheem Mostert? Colonel Mostert.
Oh, I would go Mostert. It's not even close to me.
I see. I would take Ronald Jones. I'm not a believer in that San Francisco backfield this year. You want to talk about, yes, Drake could be up and down, but at least I know that if he's healthy, he's going to play. Like with Mostert.
No, here's my counter. I completely look. I don't trust Shanahan. I say that every year. I don't trust Shanahan one iota. However, here's what I'm going to say. If Ronald Jones is the starter for 15, like it just always include like a game where they get banged up or something like that. We'll say if Ronald Jones is starter for 15 games and Mostert is a starter for 15 games, huge question mark if Mostert is, but there's a big question mark if Ronald Jones is. There's a big question mark if Ronald Jones is the quote unquote starter, if that only means 12 touches a game. But let's just say they're both starters for 15 games. Mostert for 15 games is the starter for the 49ers is an RB1. Ronald Jones as a starter for 15 games for the Buccaneers, still probably an RB2.
Yeah, I think we're looking at best case scenario here. I think that if one of them were to start for the 15 games, it would probably be Ronald Jones and not Mostert.
See, and I don't know that there's a big difference between the two because it comes down to talent and frustration of that backfield already with a coach that we actually can't even trust Arians as much as Shanahan because Arians just straight out lies. He always says like, this is going to be my guy. He looks so great. And then week one comes around and that guy's getting 3 snaps.
Cam Akers is moving up the board with this Darrell Henderson news that puts Malcolm Brown back on the board and someone else who I'm not thinking of that we potentially used to like. Who is that guy?
For the Rams?
Yeah, there's one more guy. Now I completely spaced on who it was.
I'm trying to think of somebody we used to like. See, I'm scrolling through my rankings. I'm trying to think of who it is.
Yeah, it's Noah.
Oh, John Kelly?
Yeah, that's the guy. Remember John Kelly?
Because I never used to like John Kelly.
So he's back on the board. So the injury to Henderson, I don't know how significant it's going to be, but he's going to be way behind the 8 ball. How high should Akers be going at this point then?
I now have Akers as a fringe RB2, right alongside David Montgomery, Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor, and stuff like that. Is because I still am concerned. Like, so I got pushed back on that. I was like, how do you not have Akers higher? And I said, well, that's Darrell Henderson is questionable for week 1. If Henderson's out there, yes, now he's missing the final 2 weeks of preseason, but Henderson's still a great talent, especially in the passing game. I think if Henderson is healthy, he's going to be involved. And that's my concern. And I think Malcolm Brown, as much as I don't like Malcolm Brown, and I think people have rose-colored glasses with remembering that he basically had like one great game and everybody just remembers the touchdowns when he went off in that one game early in the season, is I think he's going to get a few touches per game. If you told me that Darrell Henderson was out for a few weeks and now Akers has a chance to really solidify himself, like if we said Darrell Henderson's not going to be back until October, I'd move Cam Akers higher and it's probably inside the top 20. But the fact that Henderson could return for week 1, I don't think he's completely lost his job in his factor there. So that's what it comes down to is I think this backfield is still going to be a few more split touches than it used to be with Todd Gurley.
So if you're doing drafts now, not knowing that information, like people just aren't drafting Henderson anymore. Do you take him in the later rounds?
I would still I certainly would. I think that Henderson could essentially be what like a James White type of role. And hey, like RB3 and half and full point PPR.
Okay. I can see that. Washington situation. We went over this last show. We still don't have Bryce Love. Brother Love is getting some more run right now in terms of the press, but Antonio Gibson, he's just working out with the running backs. He's so good. I still think Adrian Peterson is going to lead this team in fantasy points.
I will, I'll take that bet. You know what? I'll take he doesn't. I know that's not really fair because I'm taking 2 versus 1, but I don't think he is at this point. I think the team is the footballs, as you love to call them. I think they're praying and hoping somebody makes Adrian Peterson just look LaShawn McCoy of last year. Not that he'll be inactive, but just kick to the side because he's just sluggish at this point. Frank Gore, that's a good comparison. So We talked about it, as you said, on the last show. Is I'll bring it up again in case people missed it. But Bryce Love, before he got hurt at Stanford, was considered a first-round talent for the NFL draft. Whether or not he went there, it probably would have been second round at worst. So you're thinking Jonathan Taylor conversation, stuff like that. And now, not the same style of running back, but if Bryce Love can show that he's even no, that's not fair. 90% of the running back that he was before the injury at Stanford, I think he does lead this backfield, but Antonio Gibson's going to be sprinkled in enough that it'll be a factor for him to be involved, where now you're looking at a true committee. If I'm taking anybody as of today, I'd probably lean towards Love. But the good thing is you can get both of them because Love is still going. What is the NFC ADP? I think he's still like undrafted as today for his ADP.
Bryce Love, running back number 57 over the last week, as high as 92, as low as 285.
Yeah. So, but 57, that's running backs outside that are kind of like, or in that range are usually undrafted. So
running backs in that range, for example, let's say 50 to 60. Sony Michel, AJ Dillon, Naheem Hines, Justin Jackson, Adrian Peterson, DeAndre Washington, Joshua Kelly, Bryce Love, Anthony McFarland, Carlos Hyde, and Jerick McKinnon. Raquel Armstead's going down there too. I'm still thinking besides, if Fournette goes down, it's not going to be Chris Thompson handling the ball 20 times a game.
Chris Thompson's keeping his role no matter what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be Armstead. And it does look like Benny Snell is going to be the guy, not Anthony McFarland. Those are the latest reports out of Pittsburgh camp right now as the handcuff.
Yeah, Benny Snell cut some weight. Best shape ever. Best shape of his life.
Well, if he's going to be, I mean, the guy that really sticks out from that list, like I would just say, you know what? I don't need you, Joshua Kelly. I don't need you, Bryce Love. Give me DeAndre Washington in Kansas City. If he's going to be the primary backup to Edwards-Helaire, just take him.
I was going to say the one. So I would take Bryce Love in front of all those guys for the upside, except for one is what I was going to say. It'd be DeAndre Washington. And I'm willing to be wrong in the fact that DeAndre Washington's not the guy, but we've seen DeAndre Washington be the guy when Josh Jacobs got hurt. If he is the guy, which would be the assumption, they signed him, they brought him in. We've seen him perform well when Jacobs was out. Darrell Williams was not really a thing when he got his opportunity. Darwin Thompson's better just served as kind of almost a Chris Thompson role. Just let him do some work in the passing game. DeAndre Washington, if you told me he was getting 15 to 20 touches, I guess I've said this before, Pat, running back blank getting 15 to 20 touches in the Kansas City offense every single week, you're going to say he's an RB1.
When I did that draft that we went through a few weeks ago and everyone just kind of mocked my team, people aren't mocking it so much anymore, Jake. Damien Harris looks like he could be a low-end running back too, which is all I need him to be for me to be successful this year. But he's moving up the board.
Damien Harris, pure talent-wise, two things. One is, speaking of Josh Jacobs, people started questioning Josh Jacobs of who the better running back was for Damien Harris back in school. And then the second part was Damien Harris last year in the NFL draft. People saw him get picked and went, uh-oh, that's bad news for Sony Michel. Damien Harris struggled with his own injuries last year, never got off the right foot, never really got his reps because the season had started. And Bill Belichick was like, hey, everything's going fine. I don't need to mess my time with you. You didn't prove anything yet, so screw you. And now Damien Harris is in the mix because Sony Michel, that knee, I wouldn't be surprised Sony Michel doesn't even get 100 carries this year. I mean, I would still put the bet on him doing so at some point if he's 80% for the entire season. But if Damien Harris leads this backfield, he's somebody that I have a lot of teams. You have him so far. The fun thing is like all these guys we're talking about, and this isn't like, look at us. This isn't a victory lap. This is why you draft these kind of things. If you're drafting early, draft the Damien Harrises, the DeAndre Washingtons, the Bryce Loves, even Antonio Gibson at the time. You could throw out, I'm scrolling down, like the Darrington Evans, guys that after August is over, that could shoot up boards because of one, camp news or other injuries. And that's why you build that running back depth if you're an early drafter.
What do we do with Antonio Gibson's position eligibility in some formats? Because in some formats, he's just a wide receiver that he's going to open up the running back eligibility pretty quickly off the top of the year.
Right.
But he's going as high as 84 in some drafts right now. Is that too high, or is that about where you would want to take him?
That's a little bit too high for me, mostly because I do believe in Bryce Love. And I do believe what you said. I do believe Adrian Peterson's a factor. Like, I don't think that Antonio Gibson is ever going to be 18 plus touches, the bell cow of this backfield. That's also not how he's built. You want a good comparison of what your best case scenario is the best version we ever saw of Ty Montgomery. Now, that best version, RB2, and RB2 a lot of weeks. Like, you could say that Antonio Gibson getting 12 to 16 touches every single week is going to be a nice RB2 for you. Some weeks will be RB1, some weeks will be frustrating to RB4. That's best case, but that's also best case without Adrian Peterson being a factor and without Bryce Love, or at least one of them getting kicked aside. So I think the other reason I bring that up is because Ty Montgomery started that whole mess of like, is he a running back or is he a wide receiver? Let's just list him at both. Let's give him that running back eligibility. Best ball league should pay attention to that. I actually overdrafted at the time and Antonio Gibson by an extra round because I was watching the ADP and where the draft was going. I took him around ahead in best balls because I was like, hey, guess what? I've got somebody who could plug in at running back or wide receiver in a best ball format. That's kind of overlooked.
Yeah, I completely agree, but you're going to need to know your settings going into the league before you do that. I mean, you should always know what your settings are, but that's one that people may not pay attention to.
And it's a very intriguing one, especially for best ball. And in your regular leagues too, you're essentially getting both on your bench for the upside, and people don't realize that. Basically just see if he's eligible at wide receiver, because that means at some point he's going to have running back eligibility too.
Yeah, that's a good call. AJ Green returned to practice with his hamstring injury, although Auden Tate has been the standout of Bengals camp. What do you do with AJ Green?
I still have him. I'm looking right now. I have him wide receiver 26, actually back to back with Tyler Boyd. And, I think that's a fair spot to put it because there's so many questions with AJ Green. I actually just talked about it on the podcast, mine that I recorded today. It's not out yet, but AJ Green is like, what do we know he is? We don't. Like, if we knew he was 100%, top 10 wide receiver talent, because that's AJ Green. We can assume that he's not that anymore, but 90%. So now he's a top 25 wide receiver with a rookie quarterback with a different offense that he was in when he was actually that being AJ Green. When he was playing, this offense is a little different now. Tyler Boyd proved that he can be good with or without AJ Green. I think this is a fair spot to have him because around Tyler Boyd is AJ Green might still have top 15 upside. And at this point where he's going in this conversation I have is like another guy, T.Y. Hilton. What's his injury status? Can he play the entire season? Like the Edelmans, the Diggs, the Metcalfs. I think that's a fair spot to put him in. If you don't want him, you don't have to take him.
Any other injury news that kind of piqued your interest that maybe people aren't really paying attention to, but might have a more severe impact than you may think?
I think I'm looking at what we talked about on my that's all the ones we talked about because Van Jefferson, that's just plain, that has no injury related to it. I guess the only other, I don't know if this even really counts, but it's injury. If an injury were to happen, the Mike Davis looks better than Bonifon because we're so could you imagine a running back stepping in for Christian McCaffrey? Like we did the Mike Davis thing with the Bears, and I think there's some upside there, but like the Christian McCaffrey is that's not a handcuff. You're lucky if you even get 60% of what Christian McCaffrey is if he goes down.
Yeah, that's true. I think they're like Mike Davis or even Bonifon, whoever it might end up being, is on tier 2 of the running back handcuffs. Although I think that someone like Benny Snell would vault himself up into the bottom of tier 1 of the running back handcuffs to take late, behind Murray, behind Madison, behind Edmonds, behind Pollard, behind...
Yeah, I think those are the big 4.
Well, I would say Washington too. Just because that the upside in that situation is so high that just gambling that he is the guy.
Oh, here's the thing. If he, if he was the guy, if we knew that definitively, if we found out today, Andy Reid was like, I'm telling you 100% no lies, he's the guy. If Clyde Edwards-Helaire gets hurt, he'd be on a tier by his own. It would be him and then the other 4.
I agree with you, but I think that the reason that I would say to include him on that tier because that potential exists, and just that potential existing would vault him into that tier. That's worth gambling on over Bryce Love. Put it that way.
That's fair.
So that would be my takeaway from the situation. I'm also kind of talking myself into your guy, Gardner Minshew. Minshew walk. I had a conversation with Will Brinson on CBS earlier today. I guess not when people were watching this, when we actually record this, but I think he scores more fantasy points than Brady does.
Ooh, I'll take that bet too.
Yeah, of course. You have to give me odds on that because I can go bet that myself and get odds on that.
I'm looking right now. How about, what do I have to give you odds, or can I give you
you can give me a spread. You can give me a spread if you like. A spread on points, like you give me.
I know. Let's see. I'm looking right now. I'm seeing. So I have Tom Brady projected for 308 points, and see, that's the thing is I like Minshew too much. I have him at 294. The spread's only 14 points.
I just think with the running that he gets there, if Brady doesn't have like the top end season that everyone is projecting for him, that Minshew is just he's going to Blake Bortles garbage time it, and he's going to run. It's going to be great.
Well, and that's the big thing is he's going to run. People don't realize, I think I mentioned this on your show. And if I didn't, just a reminder for everybody, just when you're scouting college quarterbacks is sometimes you don't realize how much they run because college rushing stats include sacks. They include the lost yardage. So sometimes people like Minshew get glossed over for the fact that they do have rushing upside.
David Njoku is dealing with a wrist injury. Would this bump up Hooperton in your mind at all?
I was already high on Hooper, mainly because, so I have Hooper as tight end number 7, right behind Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst Helmsley for you, or Hunter Hurst Helmsley. We got both of them. Really because Austin Hooper is the number 3 in the passing game. Some people want to argue that Kareem Hunt thing we were talking about before. Let's just say receivers. I joked about it before. It was a tweet by, who was it? Warren Sharp. And he was talking about the fact that Baker Mayfield was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL running 11 sets, one of the best running 12. Well, what does Stefanski do? He loves 2 tight ends. And whether it's Njoku or anybody else, the second tight end is going to be involved. But Hooper is the pass catching option. He is essentially the number 3 in the passing game. Stop trying to figure out if it's going to be Rashard Higgins or whoever else it'll be. Like the Peoples Jones is a rookie that really can't separate despite his athleticism. It's Austin Hooper. Like everybody's hating on Austin Hooper. And what I think I just told you this the last podcast. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, but I said, give Austin Hooper his stats when he was with the Falcons over 16 games. He did it in 13. I just want that over 16, not even 13. And I think that's a fair spot to put him. And that puts him right where he is at about tight end number 7.
It's funny. I don't want tight ends 3 through 14 on my team this year. Just with the way that I've been drafting. Like I want Kelsey, I want Kittle, and then I'll just wait and take one of these guys at the back. That just seems
you don't
to
even
be
want Mark Andrews?
Not where you have to draft. Like, it's not that I don't want these guys, just where you have to draft them.
Draft cost.
Just not for me.
I think Hayden Hurst cost is still way too good. I have a lot of Hayden Hurst. And Austin Hooper's fallen. What is his ADP right now on NFC? Like, it's got to be like tight end 10.
Let's see. Tight end Hooper. Tight end 13, pick number 127. That's fair, actually.
That's ridiculously low. I'll have give me all of the Hooper at that price.
People are still drafting Tyler Higbee like he's going to be awesome.
And look, there's the only question is he the guy or is Gerald ever going to get mixed back in? That's really what the concern. If Tyler Higbee was the guy, he would definitively probably be the 5th tight end off the board.
Todd
6th. People might still take Darren Waller.
I like Darren Waller a lot, actually, but you have to expect some natural regression with so many more options being on the field for the Raiders this year. It's not just him. And like, how many 13 target games do you think Waller is going to get this year?
No, and it's not even the regression, but I think he'll do a little bit better in the touchdown department. What it comes down to is, to go back to the conversation before about Tyrell Williams, is it really comes down to Hunter Renfrow. Hunter Renfrow was the Waller killer. And I think that if Renfrow is kicked aside because they're using Ruggs in the slot, that's good for Waller. If Renfro's involved a lot, that's concerning you can go look at it with and without Renfrow. That's what really hurt him in the second half.
Dirk Cutter in Atlanta says that he would expect a minimum of 15 touches a week for Todd Gurley. I would expect more than that. Like when I built in my projection, that I'd say he's probably around 20, maybe a bit more depending on the week. If they're up in games, just try to run it into the ground. Is he going to be like, because he started to get some buzz as we've gotten closer to the season, like, oh, he can walk. Who knew? Kind of thing. Like that's all people really wanted to see. But I think that he's a fringy running back 1. I really do in this offense.
I think that if we knew, so I have him for about 17 touches a game, and even about 17 touches per game, if those were just 17, but 16 games, his ranking at RB 17 for me would be too low. We know this backfield is his, and we know if anything were to happen, it's just a mess. And that's why it's a mess behind him with Kadri Olson, Ito Smith, and Brian Hill. It seems every other person has an opinion on who's the best option between the 3 of them, including the team. So what it comes down to is if Gurley can play the entire season. If Gurley can play the entire season, the 15 to 25, I think is what you'll expect week to week. 1 week, it might just be lean on Gurley because they're doing really well in the running game and they're up. And another week, it might be they pass a little bit more. Let's keep them fresh for the entire year. And it's 15. But if it's 15 minimum, if that's his floor, Todd Gurley essentially in this offense should be top 12, if not better.
I'm looking at it right now where the ADPs are going. Todd Gurley, pick number 35, the 19th running back coming off the board. Your guy, Chris Carson, number 20, the 36th pick off the board. So there's a scenario. I think having the number 1 pick is obviously where you want to pick from. I think that's a bit more pronounced this year than in most years. But if not, having the 12th pick in a 12-team league, you could theoretically go Davante Adams, Travis Kelce, and go Gurley Carson with your next 2 picks. Like, that's an awesome team to start with.
It's funny. I feel like somebody just asked me that recently. And I said, it really comes down to I don't know if he said the Kelce thing, but it was wide receiver or something like that. It might have even been take Lamar Jackson. What it comes down to is I love that pairing because if they're healthy, which is the question, and that's a lot of risk to put at your running back situation. Let's be real. We're not going to lie about it. But if they both play 15, 16 games, you're talking about 2 RB1s with already a potential best tight end, best wide receiver situation. And yeah, that's going to be league winner right there. But you're just putting a lot of weight into staying healthy.
Yeah, but you're doing that with anyone. That if someone gets hurt, they're not going to be any good. I know that these guys present. I know that these guys present. Yeah, but I know that these guys present a higher injury risk than that. But you're also getting them in the 3rd and 4th round potentially. Now, if you run that strategy and try to do that, those guys could go earlier, and then it's no good anymore. But like I had a lot of success and won leagues last year with a very similar start, where it'd be Michael Thomas and Travis Kelce, and then I would get Jacobs and Chris Carson. And those guys were fine. They weren't the best running backs in the world, but they were fringe running back 1s every week that they played. And then you have to pick someone up or you have to get lucky later with someone. But I don't hate that start if you pick from the 12th spot. Now, maybe you don't want to go, maybe you don't think that both those guys are going to get to you, or Le'Veon Bell is still going in that range. I like him less than those 2 guys, but I think that he's close enough to them with the workload that he gets that if you have the 12th pick, you could go Devontae Adams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire potentially at the turn, and then go.
Not even Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Then you could go Carson or Gurley, and then take another receiver. You take Terry McLaurin right there if you wanted to.
And I would feel more comfortable with that. I was going to throw out other running backs. I mean, we can make a case for a lot of guys here. You could say David Johnson.
No,
he's
pass.
See, but here's the case for him. If like Gurley, he's anything close to what he was and healthy, the one thing I will say about it is we know Bill O'Brien is going to try to make David Johnson a thing. If David Johnson is out there 90% every single week, and I mean 90% not what he used to be, but 90% healthy, Bill O'Brien's still going to feed him to make sure that happens because of the trade, because he wants to be right. So that's the scenario for David Johnson. Leonard Fournette, all the hate we talk about Chris Thompson taking up the passing game work. Well, what if Leonard Fournette still runs and does end up running for 12 or 1,300 yards?
Oh shit, man! I have Leonard Fournette inside my top 10 at running back.
I know. I'm saying, but in the ADP, this is where he's going.
Yeah, I didn't think he would make it that far, but I would most definitely. Yeah, if you want to throw him into that mix, you have Fournette, Gurley, Carson, and Bell. Between those 4 guys,
James Conner too.
Connor's going ahead of that now by the ADP.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's going at pick 27, 28 now. People are in on James Conner, which they should be, but he's just no longer going to be feasible in that range. He's better off in the other turn. If you go 1, 16, 17, that's where you would have to take him, I think.
If you were in the 7th round and you had 1 running back, because you got Kelce and 4 wide receivers.
I just did that in that draft in your flex league.
Would you take Mark Ingram?
No, God no. I take Dobbins instead.
Okay.
Dobbins is going at pick 7. He's actually going ahead of that now.
Oh God, stop.
I'm just telling you where he's going.
I know.
I've kind of talked myself into that Phillip Lindsay is going to outscore Melvin Gordon this year, so I'm just going to draft Phillip Lindsay in the 8th or 9th round in every league.
I do have a lot of Phillip Lindsay. I don't understand. We talked about this already, though. I don't understand the hate for Phillip Lindsay.
It's because the only reason is that Melvin Gordon is there. That's why people hate Phillip Lindsay.
But even so, why are we pretending like Austin Eckler wasn't a thing? Well, I'll say we, as in you and me, but Austin Eckler was still, what was he? I think when Melvin Gordon finally was back to 100%, and really leading that backfield last year, off the top of my head, I was going to say Austin Eckler was RB 15 or 16 the rest of the way.
He was, but
Seriously,
I think that the utilization with Phillip Rivers as your quarterback, getting these dump offs and like basically penciling in 7 targets a game, you can't necessarily make that case for Lindsay this year versus what you could for Eckler and Melvin Gordon last year. And that's
you can make the case as RB3.
Yeah, but sure, I agree with you that he could be an RB3. You get Phillip Lindsay at pick 90, that's fantastic,
right?
But
exactly.
Melvin Gordon right now is going as running back number 17, as high as 18th overall off the board.
No.
That seems asinine.
I will continue to have 0 shares at Melvin Gordon at that price.
Like that's one spot behind Jonathan Taylor, one spot ahead of Leonard Fournette, ahead of Todd Gurley, ahead of Chris Carson, ahead of Le'Veon Bell. Like that's nuts. That's pure insanity.
And why are we pretending that like all of a sudden Melvin Gordon doesn't have the same concern Melvin Gordon's always has? Why is he inefficient between the tackles? He should be better. And this offensive line is not exactly, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not glowing either. It's not like world beating. It's not the Dallas Cowboys offensive line, which I don't even know if the Cowboys are like top 5 anymore.
Yeah, there's just one problem with Melvin Gordon. He's not any good. It's tough. It's tough to overcome.
Finger paintings suck.
Yeah, it's tough to overcome. Yeah. Anything else on the docket?
I think that's really about it. You don't want to talk about Daniel Jones and his arm looking spectacular and powerful and all that stuff?
I still like that. Listen, I like Daniel Jones. Drafting Daniel Jones. Him and Minshew walk. Great late round flyers.
Yeah, people are scared about Daniel Jones because of the schedule, though, which I do get that a little bit, but this is what we do every single year. Schedules, we overrate them. If you want to talk about facing passing games specifically for wide receivers versus corners, running backs versus a stout defensive line, that's fine. But we do this every single year where we worry about defenses, and then by week 5, they're like one of the best exploitable matchups you can find.
Yeah, and especially like year to year defenses tend to be far more volatile than offenses on a consistency basis. But at the same time, we're also dealing with this weird COVID situation. There's training camp, but no preseason. I don't know how that's going to affect defense versus offense versus defense. That if there's ever a year just kind of throw everything out and be like, yeah, let's just not look at strength of schedule. Maybe teams we think are bad. Turns out they're really good, and vice versa. That I think more so this year than ever, that's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that really goes for drafting defenses too. Like, just take 2 at the end of the draft if nothing else is really peaking, especially if you're doing what we're doing and adding an additional 2 rounds. Take the 2 defenses or just aim for the one that looks like it's got a great schedule for the first 2 weeks and figure it out later.
Yeah. Who's playing Washington week 1?
Unfortunately, the Bills have one of the best first 2 weeks, and the Bills are already top 10.
All right, so take Colts. They're playing the Jags. Easy game at defense.
That could be a smart move.
Yeah, there you go. Just who do you project to be like the 3 worst teams in the league, and just take the defense that's playing them.
And there you go. Smart move. It's like and if you're doing an auction, throw them out for $2 and just make sure you get them.
Yeah. Any news? Brandon Aiyuk has a mild hamstring strain. You scared?
Not yet, but I think this kind of brings him down to a reasonable cost, because if Deebo Samuel is still back, even by the end of September, what do you know about this offense? It's a run-heavy offense. George Kittle is the number 1. If Deebo Samuel comes back, it's not like Aiyuk. This kind of goes to the Bills after John Brown. Like, do we care that much about Cole Beasley now that Stefan Diggs is there? No,
yes.
Unfortunately, we don't.
I do. I do. I care about Cole.
Really?
Beasley. I do. Yeah, of course. There's no way I don't drive Cole Beasley. He's like low rent Jamison Crowder. The guy's gonna get his 6 targets a game always. He just finds
and he's not going to this year.
He's always open.
He's not going to even be on the field. He'll be open on the sidelines.
Great. Josh Allen doesn't know the difference. Those count as targets, sir.
By the way, kudos to Pat Thorman for one of the funniest tweets I saw when he said that the false or the inaccurate COVID test for Josh Allen was a little on the nose.
Jack Doyle has been. I was gonna say Jack Doyle has been sidelined with a neck injury again. They have Trey Burton now. Is this finally the year that Trey Burton happens? Is Trey Burton even healthy? He's practicing.
Really quiet. I mean, it's been quiet on like what he's actually out there, because even the healthy Trey Burton for that brief time didn't look that. I mean, he looked hurt playing. So I don't know. I guess that's intriguing. I would say, yes, if we knew that Trey Burton was okay and Jack Doyle was out, I think that would become intriguing in that offense. But to go back through real quick to finish the answer on Aiyuk, I'm intrigued, but it's mainly I'm intrigued if Deebo Samuel's injury lingers, and it's kind of Trent Taylor from last year, and all of a sudden he's missing more than 4 weeks, or they try to force him back and he aggravates and now he's out for the year. Because what I was going to say is once Deebo Samuel is back, Aiyuk's getting kicked to third in the passing game of a running offense, and I just don't know how much is left over after you say Kittle and Deebo.
Yeah, I think that even if he was healthy, that you shouldn't draft him anyway. I just don't think he's going to have any fantasy value.
I mean, it might be Kendrick Bourne who just saw red zone target after red zone target after red zone target, and if he's the number 2, there you go.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. How about some GM speak for you? Raiders GM Mike Mayock said Nelson Agholor is, quote, on a mission. Oh, move over Brian Edwards. We have Hans McGee, Nelson Agholor on the team now.
So that article I was talking about with the Raiders, where the beat writer went through my article. It's to Sean Reed, by the way. He actually said too low on Nelson Agholor. And I was like, dude, I will happily be wrong. I will eat crow, whatever you want me to say. Like, I don't think Nelson Agholor is a factor at all. Like, hey, what if he catches 25 balls this year? Would we consider that a success? Like, seriously, like, stop with Nelson Agholor.
All right. Jake Ciely, check out his rankings up at theathletic.com. You can follow him on Twitter at AllenKid. And Jake, tell everyone where they can download your podcast and what we have coming out on Mayo Media Network for the season.
No, I'm supposed to tell you what we have coming up on the Mayo Media. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be on the show every week.
Yeah, I'll be on the show every Tuesday. We do your rankings. It's always fun, and it helps me kind of like overthink mine. I say overthink because you always bring up good points and you make me second guess myself. My own rankings that come out at midnight on Tuesdays. But yes, all in sports. I had Eric Moody on the podcast this week. You can find it Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, all the places you can find yours. You can find mine, and do the same thing that you asked them to do. Go give me 5 stars and make up for that 1 star that got really mad that Chris Meany wasn't on it anymore. But I appreciate the fact that he's mad that there's no more Chris Meany.
Yeah, not your fault. Chris went to Fade the Noise. I mean, the Athletic let him go. He popped up at Fade the Noise. Everyone should follow Chris Meany. Good friend of mine, Chris Meany.
Yes.
Smart guy,
and
too.
Rockin' woodsy beard, I must say.
Well, he lives in the wilderness now. He moved. He used to
I know. I saw the picture of his house and was like, dude, like, who's the next closest person 10 miles away from you?
Yeah, sometimes you just want to be in the wilderness by yourself. It's very quiet. I'm kind of envious. I'm not going to lie to you.
All right, fair enough.
Follow Chris on Twitter at Chris Meany. Remember, subscribe to the Mayo Media Network. We're going to have a full gamut of football shows. Basically, starting now, we got win totals next week. We're going to have all of the rankings, like for week 1 coming very soon. And then the entire week starts happening. Golf's not going anywhere. UFC's not going anywhere. Might even add some Kentucky Derby. We might add some US Open tennis. We're going to have so much content for you. Just click on it and subscribe to the network. We get to 6K. We're doing giveaways. We give to 10K. We're giving cash giveaways. So please share it around, tell some friends, and like all the episodes that go up there. Thank you all for watching. I'm Pat Mayo. You can find my rankings updated in the description of this video and podcast and up on dkplaybook.com if that's just the long route you want to go do it. So I suggest you go check those out as well. I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!